the small steps approach says, well, rather than jump in with both feet, why not choose something that is, set your challenge as something small and achievable, instead of having, if you're used to having a couple of glasses of wine in the evening when you get home, then why not try wine-free Wednesdays, and then maybe add a Monday. So it's doing things it's making changes that are achievable and sustainable.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I speak with fascinating change makers from all over the world who are contributing to the common good. Contributing to the common good in even the smallest of ways is proven to help us age with vitality and deep contentment. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist and fellow Zestful Ager. My goal is to share optimism about aging and introduce you to guests who will inspire you to live with zest. And to find out more about this podcast, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. While you're there, sign up for my weekly email newsletter, The Insider, where you will get behind-the-scenes looks at our guests and other fun tidbits. And if you love the podcast, I'd be grateful if you shared it with your friends. Our music is courtesy of Judy Banker, who was a previous guest on the show. Find out more at judybanker.com. And our technical director is Stephen Litweiler. We have a fabulous interview for you today. We're going to be speaking with Angela White, who's also known as the Running Granny. And in September of this year, she ran 875 miles from John O'Groats to Land's End, the entire length of Great Britain, to raise awareness of health and aging and to change perceptions of aging and expectations of older age. It was a world record attempt as the oldest female to do so, and she's waiting to see whether Guinness will ratify the record. Welcome to the show, Angela.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
I'm so interested to hear about your story because you're known now as the Running Granny, but it wasn't always that way.
No, it wasn't. In fact, over the last 10 years, really, I found myself overworking, putting on weight more than I wanted. I was quite unfit, and I wasn't very happy. And so, about 10 years ago, I decided that I needed to take some measures myself. No one else was going to do it for me. And it was quite difficult, really, because when you've got a high-pressure job, a family, a home, to take any time out for yourself, it feels rather selfish and you feel rather guilty for doing so. But I knew that if I didn't make some time for me, then I wouldn't be able to be well enough to look after everything else that I needed to. So I started by walking. That was the first thing that I did, just making time to go out and walk for 10-15 minutes a day initially. And I did feel bad about it, but I also felt a lot better in myself. And then I looked at other areas of my life as well. So I looked at what I was eating, what I was drinking. I looked at my social contact, which had diminished considerably, given my world had become quite small, where I had just had so much work on my plate that by the time I'd done that, come home in the evening and sorted things at home, there really wasn't much time for anything else.
And the irony, of course, is that you are a physician and were in healthcare taking care of others.
Absolutely, but I also see the same challenges in many of my colleagues. It's yes, it is ironic, very much so.
So you were doing surgery on people and getting, it sounds like, shortcut. You were getting burnt out and not taking care of yourself.
Yes, and I think that's the correct phrase. I was becoming burned out because up to the point at which I started to make changes, I had kept having glimpses of myself, and I could see things weren't right. And my story is not untypical of many people, particularly women in the sort of late 40s and early 50s, who are working. They are bringing up their families, and they may have illness in the family amongst their parents or sometimes their partner, and you do find yourself pushing to meet all what you see as your obligations, and you find the one thing that does go is time for you, and particularly any social contact.
And what was the point? I mean, you had done this, I'm guessing, for quite a while. It's a very rigorous job, even within, at least in the U.S., even within medicine. Orthopedic surgery is, one of the more intense specialties. So you've been pushing it for a while. Do you remember the moment that you said, wait a minute, this has got to change?
I think when I was finding that I was experiencing, I suppose, symptoms of overworking, so increasing headaches, feeling as if I wasn't completing all the tasks that I needed to. So the patients and ward rounds, that sort of thing, obviously had priority. But it was all the other stuff that I was doing. I had a number of leadership roles within my organisation. And so there were a lot of meetings, there was a lot of admin, there was a lot of aggravation as well. It's been a rapidly changing world in health over the last couple of decades, with austerity, with the need to try and be more efficient, with the increasing demand through I hesitate to say the ageing population, but people are living longer, and the multiple problems that they develop mean that looking after them becomes more complex. So there's a greater demand on the system, and it's very challenging for any of my colleagues, whether they're in the on the front line or whether they're in supportive roles, it's challenging for them to be faced with the need to change the way we practice, to change the whole administrative wrapper in some cases, in the way that we work, the way that patients are referred to hospitals, to appointments, the way they're seen, doing things such as what we do, one-stop clinics, where for some specialties, where they need to be organised so that patients come in the morning and they have everything from their assessment through to their tests, through to their decisions to treat, all taking place on the same day.
And I see.
And so that's a lot of change for people, and it produces a lot of aggravation and challenging situations to deal with. And I found, which takes a lot out of you when you're trying to lead that change.
And in the culture of medicine in the UK, and I hope this is not a silly question, is there any thought given to caring for the caretakers? Any kind of idea that there may be secondary trauma? Any idea that we have to care for our medical people so they don't get burned out? Is that talked about? I mean, I know in the U.S. it's a real problem. I don't know what it's like in your country.
It's one of those things that is recognised, but in practice, in dealing with it, it's quite challenging. We have occupational health departments within organisations, although increasingly the physicians that work in those areas are not employed by the organisation, but it's a bought-in service. And those occupational health doctors are there to advise on job adjustments that might be made in order to mitigate risks of what tend to be further damage to an individual. But what seems to be happening really is that colleagues are, particularly in general practice, there are fewer and fewer doctors who work full-time. Many of them work part-time, often less than 4 days a week, in order to mitigate the risk of the drain on themselves.
That's interesting. I'm aware that because I see doctors in my practice that there's a real concern, at least in the U.S., of increased depression, increased suicide, increased substance abuse here, that this is a real crisis in the field. And I don't know if that's something that you've also been seeing.
I suppose I haven't seen so much personally. I know of quite a few colleagues who have chosen to retire early as a consequence of the general changes. So some of that will be stress induced. Some of it will simply be that they feel they don't want to work in a system that doesn't or that has changed so much in the years that they've been part of it. And we have seen huge changes.
That's what I'm hearing as well. But
to be fair, I think most of the colleges and the General Medical Council would say, well, yes, there are a variety of services available. There are indeed quite a few mental health services available for doctors in the UK to contact, and your first port of call would always be your own GP and or the occupational health department within your organisation. But there is stigma still attached to having a mental health problem, and so many doctors don't want to, I suppose, declare it.
So you took matters into your own hands and said, I need to figure this out.
Well, I did. Yes. So initially I made changes for myself, but eventually I left the organisation that I was working for. Because it wouldn't have got any easier.
Was that a hard decision?
It was an incredibly hard decision. Yes.
So it sounds like you really had to have some perspective on, what was healthiest for you ultimately, that you were having to make an assessment of, is this the way I want to spend my life?
Yes, that's right. But I think it's led on to other things. I initially worked for, when I left, I initially worked for myself as an independent consultant using a mix of skills, both from my medical career and from my previous career in the computer industry. So I've led and worked on a number of projects that have been to do with healthcare IT and electronic patient health records and so on. So that's been quite good. But I've also worked in a consultative capacity on things like sort of the future of the workforce in health. So I've worked with a Department of Health group on that. So I've used my skills in other ways.
You've done this professionally too, this whole idea of we're aging. What is that going to look like for the population and for healthcare. So it sounds like you are thinking about this on a personal level, starting to walk and starting to say, I have to make some adjustments, but you are also doing it professionally.
Yes, very much so. Looking forward, and now I mean one of the big concerns that I have is the large amount of money of the healthcare budget that is spent on looking after people who develop what we call collectively long-term conditions. So in the UK, 70%, that's 70% of the whole health and care budget is used to look after people with long-term conditions. So that's many of your conditions, your neuromuscular conditions, so things like Parkinson's and muscular sclerosis and Alzheimer's, but it's also many conditions that are preventable, such as obesity and the complications that leads to, such as type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure, heart and lung disease, and also anxiety and depression, which is can be a primary healthcare condition, but it can also be secondary, particularly if you have other long-term conditions. The biggest growth in long-term conditions is in younger people developing obesity and those other preventable conditions. So I'm very concerned about what that growth and what those numbers mean for the ability of this country to deliver all the other aspects of healthcare that we need for the population, and that will be the same in the States as well, and many other countries. If we have to spend all our money on treating people with long-term conditions, then there isn't anything left for your accident and emergency, your maternity care, your paediatrics, and so on. And I worry that my grandchildren and their children, when they have them, won't be afforded the same healthcare privileges that we've had over the last 60, 70 years.
I see. So it sounds like you've become somewhat of an evangelist for taking care of oneself, and you use the term in some of your work, these small steps, how important these small steps are. And I think fully realizing that the average middle-aged woman is not going to start running the entire length of Britain, right? Okay. So would you talk a little bit about these small steps?
Yes, of course. So it's quite a timely point to mention them, really, because here we are in December and, shortly after Christmas, people will be starting to think of all those New Year resolutions that they want to make.
Right.
And quite often people will dive in with big plans. Nothing wrong with having big plans, but the idea that they're going to go to the gym every day and they're going to lose a stone in the first month, or they plan to lose X amount of weight, or give up tobacco or drinking altogether, or whatever it is. The bigger the plan, the more difficult it is to deliver upon it. And then particularly, dieting is something we see often. People will start a diet, they'll manage to stick with it, depriving themselves of everything that they enjoy for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe even a few months. But then there comes a point where they stop for whatever reason. They might not have lost the weight, they might have lost the weight, but inevitably the weight will go back on. And the small steps approach says, well, rather than jump in with both feet, why not choose something that is, set your challenge as something small and achievable. It could even be fun. You can do it with a friend. So if you're used to having biscuits with your mid-morning coffee, then why not just cut those out? And maybe, if it's really difficult, just cut them out every other day to start with, or replace them with a piece of fruit. Instead of having, when you're if you're used to having a couple of glasses of wine in the evening when you get home, then why not try wine-free Wednesdays, and then and maybe add a Monday. So it's doing things it's making changes that are achievable and sustainable. And
you're setting yourself up for success.
Absolutely. So rather than... and the evidence is that if you can persist with your change for 3 weeks, then it is more likely to become a habit. And also don't try to do too many things at one time. So maybe just add something in each month. So it may be that you cut out those biscuits in the first month. Maybe in February you say, well, okay, let's have a little go with this wine. And maybe, if you wanted to do an extra thing, maybe start that walking. Just go, at lunchtime, or, in that coffee break if you wanted to, if your job allows you to do it. Just get up, just go out for that, that 10, 15 minutes and walk rather than have those biscuits. It's about doing what you feel is right for you and fits with your own work pattern and life pattern, but that is achievable. Mm-hmm. And then you can pat yourself on the back because you've done it. And actually you also, the chances are you won't notice that you've taken that out. Whereas if you decide you're not going to have, if you're going to reduce your carbs significantly over a period of a month, first of all, in the first few days, you're going to feel absolutely rotten because your body's used to having a certain level of intake. So you won't feel right on it. And you may become tired and fatigued and not able to do other things properly. It might disrupt your sleep. So much better to go for smaller steps.
So you took the smaller steps of starting to walk, and how did you get to be the oldest woman to walk across Great Britain? What was that journey like?
Okay, so that was a few years into my small steps. So that was about 3 years in, and I had answered an advert that I saw from a lady who was setting up a small running group for older ladies, and it took me a while to actually give her a call. I'd made a note of the telephone number, but again, whenever you're thinking about starting something new, particularly something that is as public as running, you find you've got those 20 ways to kill an idea. So, you go thinking, who am I to think that, here I am at the age of 53, who am I to think that I can, I should go running? I'd look ridiculous. I won't be able to keep up. They'll all laugh at me. What will the family think? You go through, by the time, if you listen to those voices, it's very easy to talk yourself out of it. And so it took me a few weeks before I picked up the phone. And when I did, I arranged to go and join this lady. And she was an inspiration. She was at the time 67, and she had started running herself when she was 62. And after a week or so of going out and having this little sort of walk jog with her and the group, I learned that she'd set herself a big challenge for the following year, which was to do. We have. I live in the Lake District in England, and we have a lot of mountains, and there's a lot of running that takes place around those mountains, and there are some very well known classic mountain challenges that people take on. And she had set herself the challenge to do one of these. And it sounded, I'd heard about these, but only about 6 months or so beforehand, as a friend had done one. And they sounded amazing. You know, you run, the one that she was doing, you run 48 miles over 30 peaks, and with 17,000 feet of ascent. And, at her age, she had 24 hours to do it. So I offered to go out with her and train with her on the hills. And I bought my first pair of fell shoes and went out and learned what it was like to just run through cold, wet, muddy bogs. And you walk up the hills, you shuffle along the tops, pick your way carefully down the quite technical descents. I trained with her, and then I had the privilege of accompanying her when she actually did the event. And by then I was hooked.
And so I was just going to ask you, so again, we start with small steps, start walking, and now all of a sudden you're running through bogs. Did it take a while for you to kind of get the bug, or was it pretty quickly after you joined this group and saw this woman?
It wasn't an instantaneous single thing. What I found was that by going out with her and doing these, recceing the days with her, I found the huge well-being effect of being up in the mountains, you know, putting all that effort in to climb up something and be on the tops of the mountains in the clear air, with such wonderful views. So there was a huge mental well-being effect. But there was also the confidence factor. So I had to get my map reading skills back up to scratch. Because there aren't any signposts necessarily up there. So, you know, you need to be able to read a map, to read the contours, to recognise where you are. So there was this great feeling of liberation being up there, but also this sort of the feeling of being in control, of being able to start at a particular point and navigate successfully round and back to the starting point. And, you know, sometimes it still surprises me that I managed to get this right.
And what was the reaction of your family when all of a sudden, you know, you're coming back from the bogs and the mountains?
I think they were. I think there was an element of surprise that this was something that I had taken on, but it coincided with my youngest son doing his A levels and then going on, a year or so later going on to university. So it came at the right time, really, because previous to that, I would never have been able to take hours out of my day, or indeed a whole day, to go out and do something like that. Because there would be commitments at home.
Stage of life, and offered you the opportunity to take some of your own time and not just being a parent.
That's right. And what I found, the other part of it was that having learned that my body would adapt to do these long days, and then having done the first event, as it were, by supporting my friend through her challenge, I'm hugely curious as to what my body is capable of, and so that's led to one thing and another, and doing a variety of different races of increasing length and endurance, and just being amazed that my body will perform for me. So I'm not fast by any stretch of the imagination. I'm at the back of the pack runner, but I have met huge numbers of people. I've made so many new friends as a consequence. My social contact amongst the running and the endurance community is a really rich part of my life. this weekend coming, I'm off to help out on an event. So I'll help on Friday set up, register folks, and then look after them when they return Friday evening, and then clear up on the Sunday. So just giving back the time to other people in the same way that other marshals and give and volunteers support the races that I do. So I've met a lot of people. I've met a lot of people across the age ranges as well. Mm-hmm. One of my proudest moments was when a young friend who's 30, half my age, a year or so back, said would I be prepared to partner her in a mountain marathon? And so I thought, gosh, that was amazing. I thought.
So the intergenerational piece of it, where you're meeting people who normally you would not probably be social with.
Quite, yeah, that's absolutely, yes. So there are people in the running community from all backgrounds, all ages, all colours, all backgrounds, all running abilities, and if the rain is going to fall on you and you're going to be soaked through in the middle of the night, then it doesn't matter who you are. If there's a bunch of you out there, you'll endure it together.
I'm thinking about, as you're talking, Angela, how many of the boxes you're checking off in terms of what we know about longevity. I'm thinking about your volunteering, your mentoring, doing physical movement, finding purpose, being in a community. I mean, you are really checking the main boxes of what we know helps people live well and live longer.
Yes, I think when you put it like that, yes, I am, and I think that's what. So one of the criticisms that I've set. Sorry, let me wind back. I've set up a social enterprise called Going for Old, which I hope to start developing next year, and that's all about encouraging, motivating, and inspiring people to take these small steps themselves and adopt positive lifestyle choices to improve their quality of life as they age. And I've been criticised once or twice with running from John O'Groats to Land's End, with people saying, well, how does that stack up against what you're promoting in terms of the small steps? And my response is twofold, really. On the one hand, it was about raising awareness of health and ageing, and the health and ageing issues, and about the trying to change our perceptions of ageing and what our expectations of ourselves are. But on the other hand, my running and doing setting myself that particular challenge grew out of my small steps in going out and joining that small running group. And there are so many parallels with the small steps, as you've just, as you said, through the running, I'm ticking off the social contact, the intergenerational stuff, the community, the volunteering, the sense of pride and pleasure that I get in seeing people achieve the events that they're, when I'm helping out, people come across the line. I've been on the line putting medals around the necks of people who've just completed their very first half marathon, at whatever age they are, and just being able to share those 3 or 4 seconds where they realise they've done it.
That sounds so touching.
It's true. It's tremendous. So there's so there are a lot of parallels really with doing that big run. But I firmly believe that if you think that you are what you think, and if you think that 50 is a big number or 60 is a big number, and that when you get to 60 you're going to slow down, or it's the appropriate thing to do to slow down, then what will happen is when you get to 60 you will slow down.
Absolutely. And we see that in the research. Absolutely.
Whereas if you think I can, I'm going to do this, and this is my next jump, and this, and then I'm going to do that. If you think positively and you think fast and you think energetic, then it will come to you. And so often in my running, again, I see the parallels there, how the psychology works. If I go out and I try a new route, and I think, okay, I've set myself up, I think, right, I'm going to run 6 miles today, then my body's ready to run 6 miles. And if I get to a point and I suddenly find I've gone wrong and I've got to do another 5 miles to get home, that last 5 miles is going to be just horrendous. Whereas if I think I'm going to go out and do 10 miles and I in fact only do 8, I feel cheated.
Well, I am a senior tennis player, and I went to the National Senior Games in New Mexico, and I will say that it's so much of it is mental. When you go out there, it's so much about believing you can do it. And when you make a mistake, kind of being able to come back to a state of calm and confidence and just working at it slowly but surely. So I've seen that in my own life playing tennis, that so much of this is what we're saying to ourselves.
Yeah, it is. And certainly the big races. So there's a race that goes, so I've run down the country, but there's a race that goes across the country as well, which I've done, which is 190 miles. And that actually goes across on all the hills and the dales. So that's not on road as mine was. And I've done that a couple of times. And again, it's very much a case of it's mind over matter. You know that you're going to run that distance. You know that you're going to be running through bogs. You're going to be running through the night. It's it's a continuous race. You can sleep if you want to, where you want, and because you know what's ahead of you, you can do it. But if it's very much a mental game.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. I don't know if it's my imagination, but it seems like there's a lot of people that I've read about or heard about or even interviewed in the UK, women doing fabulous things like Jo Moseley with her paddleboard. Are you familiar with her?
Yes, it's a name I know, but we've had some brilliant female runners as well. There's a winter race called the Spine, which runs up the Pennine Way, which is the spine of England, and that's 268 miles. And a vet actually, younger woman, won that this year, knocking some hours off the previous record time. Yes, I think women. There have been lots of questions about the fact that there isn't always equity between the women's and the men's races. But I think women do endurance very well.
This is what I understand. Yes,
I think we're very good at just soaking stuff up like sponges. We soak it up, whatever it is. It comes our way. We soak it up. We somehow go and wring it out somewhere, and then we go on to the next thing. And every time we do it, we learn from it. It builds our endurance. It builds that mental side of our endurance and our resilience.
I love that analogy of being a sponge, soaking it up and wringing it out. But it sounds like your take-home message is that this doesn't have to look like some kind of extreme race. It can if you want it to, but what you're really advocating is sensible, daily, some kind of what we would call responsibility to your own health and being more intentional about taking care of our bodies. Is that right?
It is. It's our bodies and our minds. In fact, it's both parts. I think it's always difficult if you say people need to take responsibility, because I think most people would think that they generally are responsible. So one of the things that I don't want to do is to tell people what to do. I think I think if we can provide the right level of information for people in a way that they can understand and digest it, then people will make the right choices for themselves. And particularly the age group in around the 40s and 50s and 60s, most people recognise they need that where they need to make change, but for a variety of reasons don't know how to go about it. There's a certain level of inertia with what people should do. The media will regularly report a piece of research talking about a foodstuff. Maybe it's meat, maybe it's eggs, maybe it's coffee, or some activity. And then the next day there'll be another report, and they're simply providing the findings of the research. So, it could be today, it could be 3 cups of coffee is okay, tomorrow it might be none, the next day it might be 25. So people think, well, how do I make sense of this?
Yes.
What's right for me? And so one of the things that Going for Old will do is hopefully take some of those media reports and make some sense of them and put them into the context of an overall healthy lifestyle. And people tell me I'm not quite sure I should be doing this because, one of the biggest demons that we have is processed food. People don't seem to have this, whether it's time or whether it's education in terms of school education. We were always taught, we all had cookery classes, and we were taught the value of food, how to choose one piece of meat over another, and so on. But they don't seem to do that on the curriculum these days. And so people don't know how to cook. We've even seen television programs where children don't even know that chips come from potatoes that grow in the ground.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I think what you're doing is so powerful, using your professional education and experience and really understanding what these lifestyle choices will do and won't do, but also this personal part of, how this has changed your life, and the idea of small steps and the idea of making it pleasurable. It's not a punishment for eating. It's a pleasure to move the body, which has been, engineered to move. So I love how you're bringing both parts of yourself to this, and it's so important. I hope I'm not butchering this, but it reminds me of that quote. I think it's from Confucius, saying the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.
Yes, I think that. Yes, I've certainly heard.
That sounds like that describes your journey, and I really appreciate you talking to us today. And I'm crossing my fingers for you that the Guinness record holds. Are you still waiting to hear?
Yes, I won't. They won't get back to me for probably about 3 months. They take their time, unfortunately, which is right and proper. I've sent all the evidence off to them. I know that So in terms of the record itself, I know that I've actually achieved setting that record. Whether it's a question of whether they will accept the evidence that I've sent them as being sufficient for them to be able to ratify it as a Guinness record.
What a wonderful, wonderful experience. That's so inspiring, and I know our audience is cheering you on, and I hope that you will be very active on social media when that comes to pass.
Yes, I certainly will be, but it's emotionally it hasn't really sunk in what I did. Intellectually, I know that I did it, but it hasn't really sunk in that I've actually physically myself run every step.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Angela, and best of luck, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. It's called Too Much Stuff. And Too Much Stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical. It's realistic. The lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long exploratory, super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety. So being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.